We are here for an information session about the Land Justice Futures Focus Community Program. And we have a lot of information to share. We are going to have an interview with one of our sisters. We want to have time to hear from you. So I'm going to talk today about a number of things. First, I just want us to settle into this moment. Why are we here? Why are we bringing together land justice and women religious or faith communities? What's the connection there? And then we'll look at how do we engage this through this particular program? What does it look like? We'll take some time to hear from Claire McGowan, one of our current participants, and then we'll come back and look at what are some potential outcomes for this program? What does it actually look like when communities are on the land justice journey? And then again, talk at the end about who is this for and when is the right time for communities. So let's just go ahead and jump on in. We are at a time in society, in the world, where we know that the harms of racial and ecological injustice are intricately connected, and both have their roots in the colonization of this land. And the church plays a particular role in that history through the doctrine of discovery. And the church holds a lot of responsibility for that. And so, as Pope Francis has taught us through Laudato Si, we have to think about integral ecology. We have to recognize that all is connected. And Pope Francis wrote that a true ecological approach always becomes a social approach. You have to consider both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. And that is what land justice is trying to do, trying to constantly bring these realms together so that we're not just looking at ecological well-being or just looking at racial justice, but looking at what does it mean to bring these two together. We know that we're in a time of climate emergency, and we know that land access in particular is a major barrier to the just, regenerative, and livable future that we want to see. We used to talk about that 1,500 acres a day are lost to private development in this country. It's now almost 2,000 acres a day that are lost. Um, and with that, 98% of privately owned land in the United States is owned by white people and institutions. And so within that, even, we know that the Catholic Church is the world's largest landowner, largest private landowner.
Hmm.
And so being part of this institution of the largest private landowner, where we know that racial and ecological healing are so desperately needed, and we know that there's such inequality built into all of these systems, we're left with these questions of what is our responsibility? How have we been complicit in building these systems? And how do we need to respond to that today? And we believe that sisters, as part of the church's most creative and liberatory traditions, sisters can help to resource new expressions of healing, repair, and sustainability. However, those possibilities are often inaccessible or inhibited by a lack of precedent or support. And so that is why we are here at Land Justice Futures. Our goal is to help bridge those gaps so that religious communities can more fully embody their values and creativity as they navigate transition and as they seek to resource a future of right relationship. Women religious are a powerful body, a moral force in our society. They have a unique ability to shift the cultural narrative about land through the practical decisions they make about the future stewardship of their land. And to us, this really comes down to encounter and transformation. Who are we encountering? How are we encountering them? How do we encounter the land? And how do we let all of that transform us? So, just a very brief history of how we came to be. In 2016, Nuns and Nuns was formed as a community of encounter. a community of women religious and younger community-oriented activists of a variety of spiritual backgrounds who came together to ask some big questions and to deal with some challenging realities. Our nation was just beginning to more intensively face these intertwined crises of climate collapse and racial injustice. And at the same time, many faith communities were looking at we've got decisions that we have to make about our land, some very urgently in the next 1 or 2 years, and some, in the next 20 or so years. Um, but given that ecological and racial healing are so desperately needed, these groups began to ask, what shall we do together then? And so we continued living into those questions. In 2021, Land Justice Futures was formed out of Nuns and Nuns. And we have deepened our work with women religious and with the movement partners over these last several years. And through that time, our questions have evolved, and they've evolved into what are the bold, creative, and just possibilities for the future of religious land? And what if this moment of divestment might actually be one of the most powerful moments of all?
Mm.
And one of our participants in our first cohort, Sister Joan Gallagher, who's a CSJ, Sister of St. Joseph of Brentwood, put it so well. She is standing in the middle there holding the earth. And she said, at this transitional moment in the history of religious life, there is another way to engage in decisions regarding land. In solidarity and blessed unrest, there is potential for transformation that will bring new life to all people and the planet. And that is why we are here. We are here to be in this space of transformation and to help try to find the way forward so that this can happen and we can move into right relationship. So let's talk a little bit now about how do we do that? What does this process look like? The first thing to know is that our organization is rooted in our connections to women religious and is deeply rooted in the broader movement. There is a growing and exciting movement for land justice that's led by Black and Indigenous communities and other communities of color. There is a long history of creative resistance to colonization that they bring, and many ways of approaching how to address the climate crisis while also addressing extreme racial disparity in land access and land ownership. And so we are accountable to this broader movement, and we are deeply embedded within this broader movement. These are some of the folks pictured here who make up our Movement Advisory Council, who advise us on what is needed, who help us hear that call, and help us understand what our particular role can be. And what we've learned is that our role as an organization is to help organize land-owning white Christians to respond to this broader movement that's already happening. And again, we believe that sisters are an incredibly powerful force within the Catholic Church and within Christianity at large. And what we're hearing from the movement and from these partners is that land is key. Land is key to both racial and ecological healing in this country. And who owns the land, who governs the land, how we treat the land. It is through all of those decisions that we make about land today that we believe can resource a future of right relationship. And that is what land justice is all about. Sometimes we like to think about land justice as a leaf with different parts to it. A land justice initiative is one that protects the land from extraction. It also regenerates the health of the land, and it would also restore governance to communities who have been dispossessed of land in this country, particularly Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color. And so our focus community program seeks to help faith communities understand how to create those initiatives. It's a place where we help build power, connection, imagination, and the practical know-how for communities as we walk through them in this process. We are currently 18 communities. We have had 3 cohorts, and each cohort is 2 years. So our first cohort has completed the whole program. We have another group of 9 communities who will be completing in December. And we have a group of 4 communities who just began in March. So we're still involved with all 18 communities. And what we're really working through in the entire program is helping communities adopt what we call a land justice lens, a lens through which our communities and congregations can see the world and which will inform and guide how we choose to make important decisions about the land, so that whatever conversation we're having, it's like we have our land justice goggles on and we're looking at what does racial and ecological justice look like at this point on this land. How we do that in really broad terms is we are a learning community who is deeply connected to the broader movement, who provides congregations tailored support, and who is first and foremost rooted in spirituality. We know this is the deep, deep work of transformation, and we cannot do that apart from the spiritualities that have formed us and continue to hold us. We have particular goals in the program. We primarily begin through a lot of education, examining what got us here. We spend a lot of time visioning, looking at what needs to shift, and finding out what is possible by connecting more deeply to the movement. And then again, learning how to put all of this into practice. What are the tools and the relationships to really take concrete action? Our curriculum is robust. It is not a straight line journey that we move through. We spend a lot of the first year in the program building foundations and looking at all the ways that this ecological and racial injustice has shown up throughout history and the ways that healing is needed today. And then in the second year, we really dive into all the tools that communities need in order to clarify their own needs, their own possibilities, in order to build relationships and to see what's possible. We study lots of different examples, but we know that each community's journey is unique and each community's circumstances are very unique. There is not the expectation that you will have finished your land transition by the end of the 2 years. That's completely unrealistic. It has never happened. I will be shocked if it happens. But this is something where we are equipping communities with the tools that they need to incorporate this land justice lens into their discernment processes from now on. So just a glimpse of what this looks like in real life. We have a variety of immersive learning experiences across all of our cohorts, within one specific cohort, so within the communities who begin together, within your congregation, and within your congregation's specific focus community team. You will have a land justice coach who will work with your team throughout the entire process. And the team is 3 to 5 people within your community who are uniquely poised to help move your congregation or your community through this whole process. We invite you to our national gathering, where we bring together our religious partners, our faith communities, and folks from the movement to learn together, to deepen together. We have cohort calls where you would be on Zoom with everyone in your cohort every 6 weeks. And then we have coaching calls with your coach that happen regularly on Zoom. And there's a 2-day on site workshop for your entire community or congregation. We have one-time things that are included in the program, like our intermill study. Each community works with Jessica Intermill, who's a land attorney, who helps uncover the history of the particular land that you steward and helps uncover what is the story of that land, sort of tracing all of the legalities throughout history to help you understand how it got to be in your hands today. And then we have a lot of technical partners and movement partners that we connect you with across the 2 years, both to develop practical skills and to really deepen in relationship with people who have been resisting colonization and who we are working toward right relationship with. Um, when folks are finished with this 2-year program, communities complete it with a new story and vision for the legacy of their land and community with this new understanding. So that is a broad strokes why we're here and what it looks like in a sense for us to engage in this work together. I want to bring Claire McGowan in now so that Claire can help us understand what it's been like for her and her community. So Claire, I'm just going to ask you some questions and we'll just be in conversation for about 10 minutes or so. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
Great. So again, remind us of which community you're a part of and tell us why did your community join the Focus Community Program in the first place?
Okay, I'm a Dominican Sister of Peace, and we are a combination of 8 congregations of Dominican sisters from throughout the United States who merged about 12 years ago. So we don't all know each other well. Um, and the reason we got involved in this land justice effort is that one of our sisters in Kansas had been watching some of the seminars that were offered by Land Justice Futures and was very interested in what was going on with that group. And at the same time, without my knowing it, a good friend of mine, Chris Laughlin, started talking about this really interesting group of young people that she had met, and she had become part of the board of what at that time was called Nuns and Nuns. So Chris was a good friend of mine, and we were talking about it, and the group sounded really interesting. Just the name Nuns and Nuns was interesting in itself. Um, so when I saw that um, Nuns and Nuns was moving toward a land justice focus and was actually planning a program that would help other communities to get involved in land justice, I wrote to our prioress at the same time that my friend, the sister in Kansas, wrote to our prioress and said, would you all look at the possibility of our joining Land Justice Futures? So within a month, the leadership team had met and said, yeah, we would like to do that. So um, my friend in Kansas was asked to chair the committee and gather a group, and we started to talk. And in the meantime, we in Kentucky are close to the Loretto community, which had started, was in the first cohort, the first group. And I started hearing reports about the meetings that were going on at Loretto that sounded really interesting. So that increased my motivation and our motivation. The two factors I think that have been most important to me and to us are who the group is called Land Justice Futures. There are now 12 wonderful, amazing, bright, and highly committed young people who have taken on this agenda. They are the land justice team. And the other group that's been most formative for me are the movement partners, which is Indigenous and Black people who have brought their expertise into this relationship. So the motivational factor comes from both the opportunity to work with young, energetic people who believe that nuns have something to offer. We've been in the mode for the last 20 years or so of feeling like we're just kind of dying out and we're not going to have much of a future and there isn't a whole lot we can do anymore. But hearing that this group of young people believes that we have a lot to offer right now, and that the partners, the Indigenous and African American people who are doing really creative things, are willing to work with us, not out of a great deal of trust, because particularly the Indigenous partners have not have not had a good background with us. I mean, we were the ones who ran the schools that were trying to change the cultures of Indigenous people. So it's not because of trust, but it's a willingness to give us a chance and seeing that, yeah, good things are beginning to happen. So those are the main reasons, is that it's an opportunity for us older women religious as we are moving toward completion to be involved in one of the most exciting and creative things that we could be doing at this stage of our history.
Thank you, Claire. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's been like for your community to be in the process? And has there been anything that you have seen shift within your community within the last 18 months that you've been doing this?
Well, I can talk about it in two levels, I guess. The team, which
Mhm.
is for us 6 people, and the congregation at large, which is about 300 people. So the team we've really struggled with what is it that we can do? How can we do it? Where can we do it? It's not been an easy journey, but everybody is still completely on board because we know it's a good journey. It's an important journey. Um, and the congregation at large, from the beginning, was curious about it, and another thing I wanted to say is the land justice team is very flexible. So they thought a 2-day meeting of congregations was an essential part of the way they would work. But we weren't able to do a 2-day joint meeting because of our geographical spread. So we had one day on Zoom for the whole congregation, and then a day as part of our community days this summer in person. And the combination of the two has been really excellent for us. So our sisters are, most of them really committed to learn more, they're watching some of the videos, they're reading some of the books, and they want us to do more. They're kind of pushing us to keep going. Um, so I think it's been a really energizing and motivating force for the whole congregation.
Thanks. Um, Claire, one of the comments that we hear most often, which is completely valid, is that this seems like a great program. We would love to do it, but there are so many other things going on in our community, so many other pressures of governance and care for sisters and decisions that need to be made that we just have too much going on right now, and we just can't do it. As someone who's in the program, who's in a community that's highly booked, we, like you said, we couldn't even find 2 days that entire first year when we could come to your workshop. In a community that has a lot of those pressures and demands, how would you respond to that?
I guess my simple answer is we can't afford not to do it. It's a way of pulling together all of the questions, all of the demands, all of the responsibilities that are ours at this point in time. Yes, we are individually, we are losing capacity quickly. Yes, we have many questions about the future. Yes, we don't know exactly what we should be doing, but there's some potential in this particular process that gives meaning to all of those questions. One comment that I heard from Loretta was, we spend so much of our time talking about illness and death and dying and diminishment, but here's something that we can be doing that gives meaning to the way we go out of existence, gives a great deal of meaning to the way that we're going out of existence. And we could potentially make a major difference because Catholic sisters, despite our age, still have a lot of credibility in this country. So what we do is noticed. And if we think it's important and valuable to make sure that the huge transition of land and property that's going to happen in these next 10 years or so is done in a way that's thoughtful and committed to the well-being of others, that's going to have a lot of impact.
Yeah, Claire, you have sort of talked around this a little bit, but I want to just ask you directly, how do you see and how have you come to understand land justice as relating to your call as women religious, as relating to the call of your charism?
I think there's two parts of it. One is what we call transformation. That's at the personal and congregational level of coming to a much deeper understanding of how influenced we are by white supremacy and how, despite our best efforts, perhaps, to move beyond white supremacy, we're very much part of the problem in the ways that we have grown up, in the ways that we have structured our congregations. So to get in touch with the need for a major spiritual transformation by studying the issues, by talking about the issues, by being exposed to the victims of these issues, that in itself is major. On the other hand, the other part of the major tran transition that's the motivation for why we're doing this is that transactions are called for. So transformation and transactions are the two terms that work for me to say what we're about. So transactions means that we're actually looking at trying to find ways that some of our property can go back to the people from whom it was stolen in whatever ways we can manage to do that. So those seem to be the two words that hold what's important to me.
Thank you, Claire. That I just it's a perfect transition. And I just want to say, having worked with your team so closely, you all have really grasped and like clung to that concept that yes, this is about transactions, in a real tangible way, but it can't happen without our personal and our communal transformation. And that is our role. That is why we are here, and that is what's going to bring these healing transactions about that will help us toward right relationship. So thank you for bringing that into this space. And thank you for being with us. I think I'll go through.
Thanks for inviting me.
Sorry.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'll go through a few more things and then we'll have some time for more questions or discussions. Um, But let's look for a minute at sort of what might come from this, what Claire was just talking about, being in relationship with these movement partners and seeing what might actually happen. So there are a couple of uh, communities that I just want to highlight. And none of these, I just want to note, have are like a finished product, but these are where our communities are in process. So this is Sister Joan Gallagher again, who is a sister of Joseph of Brentwood, and she is with the Shinnecock kelp farmers. And through this process of deepening into land justice, they have developed a relationship, and the CSJs have been doing advocacy and solidarity work with the Shinnecock women for years. And several years ago, the Shinnecock women approached them and asked if they could have access to the Shinnecock Bay at the retreat center that the CSJs have there. And they said, well, sure, this is your land, this is your bay. Of course, you can have access here. And so they've developed a beautiful relationship where these women have begun kelp farming. They use the retreat facilities. They work together on it. And it's a wonderful example of how relationship brings us into these tangible aspects of land justice, and it's ongoing. We don't know what the final outcome will be here, and the CSJs are really looking to the Shinnecock women as the experts to say, as the ones who know best what would work for them. And so it's a relationship of deep care and mutual respect. Another example is three of our communities in Dubuque have been deepening in relationship with all kinds of movement partners. This is a picture from just the other day when they went to visit a regenerative farmer named Mari. She's kneeling there in the hat. And they've been in conversation with her for a while, and they went to see the farm that she has, and she has this farm, Black Earth Gardens, that's doing this work of regenerative agriculture and anti-racism activities. And so they're in relationship with her, and they are figuring out what that means and what that looks like for the future. And for now, they are just supportive community partners. Another really exciting thing that just happened is one of Alex's communities, the Poor Handmaids of Jesus Christ, just welcomed three Potawatomi women to their land who stayed overnight, and who they exchanged gifts, they walked the land together, they established some great relationships, they're planning future visits. And so, again, this is an example of we don't know where this is going, but the PHJCs have been in our program for 4 months, and they're already welcoming these women in and developing relationships with them and saying, we know we need to be doing this work with you and alongside you. And so now they are doing that together. There are other potential tangible outcomes. Some communities are considering direct transfers of land. Some have rewritten their land ethic or care for creation statements to incorporate a land justice lens. Some are looking at selling properties and donating a certain percentage of the income to a collective or to a land back fund like the Miami Honor Fund. Or there are many, many other ways that land justice can look. So, and again, we're constantly recognizing that this is a journey, and we take one step and we do one thing, and then we see where it leads. And so this is a journey where we just have to find the next open door and see if it's one that's right for your community. There are a few particular things I want to cover quickly about who should join and when they might want to join. So if you're interested in the program, there are a few requirements that we have for joining. And that is really, we want your community to hold a commitment to exploring racial and ecological justice um, into your property discernment and into your property planning beyond your community's present stewardship. And we want the active support of your community's elected leadership. It's just critical that those who hold the decision-making positions in communities are on board with this process. Um, There are a few logistics that we want to go over. So each community will form a team of 3 to 5 members. One of those members needs to be on your elected leadership team. This small team will engage in the 2-year experience. They will attend the cohort calls every 6 weeks, and they will also meet twice in between each of those cohort calls. Once just as a team to go more deeply into the content of what's being presented in the curriculum, and once with your coach. You will also host at least 2 facilitators from our team to conduct that 2-day workshop for your community. This team also just provides a lot of leadership within your wider congregation, helping folks be involved in the process, helping bring folks along in the education and in the new learnings. We want you to attend our national gathering. Um, and again, the land justice coach is really there to walk you through this whole process. So it might seem a lot right now, but you would have a coach with you every step of the way to help you know what's the next thing that you need to be doing. We do ask for a contribution. This work costs our team about $25,000 to move a community through this 2-year program. And we invite each community to discern a contribution that makes sense for your community. We ask that you consider a $500 to $20,000 scale. And that can be contributed really any time that you're in that program. There are a couple of particular steps if you do decide that you want to apply. First is just assessing, is this the right time for our community? Do we have that commitment? And do we have the support of leadership? Next is to look more at the program. And we ask you to attend one additional offering before you apply. We have an Intro to Land Justice session that's happening on August 27th. So we would ask you to attend that or watch the recording from that. And then the next step is to look at our info packet and a further, a more detailed list of requirements for the program. Both of these will be sent to you via email after this call. And the info packet has a ton of information in there. It answers every question that you might have. There's so much in there that you might need help finding the answer to the question that you have. So we'll also follow up with you and see what other questions you have. And then the last step, if you think this is a good fit for your community, is just to apply. We're inviting folks to apply by September 15th for priority consideration. Applications will be open after that, but we are going to start interviews shortly after September 15th. So we really encourage you to get your application in early. Some of us will be at LCWR next week, and we know that there will be a lot of interest there. So we're expecting a big turnout at our next information session in September, and there will be a lot more applications coming after that. So we just invite you to get yours in early if you are ready to do that. And then we will reach out to schedule an interview with you. Your follow-up email after this will include, again, the info packet, the program requirements, and a link to our application. So thanks for joining, and I hope that this answered a few of the questions that you may have been holding. And now we just have time for a little bit more discussion or questions that you might have.